All right, this is going to be another video on setup and breaking down a little bit more on breaking down a little bit more on how to navigate each major session that I trade with the Arcane VOB indicator. And into this setup or tutorial or breakdown, however you want to call it, Arcane session auto flow, we're gonna be breaking down how I navigate each of these sessions and what I typically focus on. So the first major session that we're going to be focusing on, um, maybe before we even get to that, is going to be the trading zone, right? So I'm going to talk about the trading zone. And by the way, on your indicator, under the signal trading window section, if you go and then make sure to click Arcane Auto Flow Filter, this would ensure that these are already filtering for all your entries to fall inside of this window right here. Now, when I'm trading all my RVB, I want to ensure that it falls within each of these three windows. And I'm going to kind of explain to you the importance of this briefly because I think I need to most likely make a full video on this just alone, but this is not the goal of this video specifically today. We're talking about session order flow, so we'll talk about this in maybe a different video. Now, with the arcane trading zones, it's a bit very unique because here, the very first zone that like I really focus on is going to be the 00 till 16 of every hour. So for example, 9 a.m. to 9:16. The next one, if you're using 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., for example, is going to be 9:31 to 9:36. Right after that, you're going to have 9:43 to 9:48. Okay. These are going to be typically the window that you want to focus on when it comes down to where your entry are located. Okay. If I have an entry, if it is not falling within this, you should be worried, right? You should ensure that all your entry fall within this window. If you make sure that you click on this Arcane Autoflow filter, all your entries should fall within that. So never forget to click this because if you get an entry confirmation is not in your window, definitely this button was not clicked. And if it actually is clicked and you get an entry like that and it's a bug, please let me know. I'll make sure to fix that. Okay. But that's the first thing I wanted to talk about before we even get into the session of the full breakdown. So now when I'm trading London, I'm going to break down exactly what London entails, kind of like what visually, what does actually mean. So I made a video on the RVB, the reclaimed volume order block model. If you have not watched that video, I highly implore you, please go back watch that video first. Because if you do not watch that video, you're not going to understand anything that I break down in this session of the flow video. So that's going to be very important because I'm really mentioning RVB, MVB, all those are different forms or different variation of like the RVB setups. Okay. So I just given it code names so it's easy for me to reference and then explain what each of them are. So that's that. Now, London is a bit unique because True London session kind of like this a early fake move of London, like not every day, but a lot of the days, maybe like 2 to 3 times every 2 3 weeks. You have sometimes scenario where you have set up that begin forming and deliver in this window, but you should not be taking those entry because sometimes it will work. It will deliver to standard deviation 4 target, but very like there's a lot of time where it will not necessarily go all the way to the full target. It will actually begin maybe moving to standard deviation 1 or maybe 1.5 and then immediately think after that, right after 3 and begin moving. So it's essentially like an early fake out. Think of it like that, right? This window. So a lot of the time you could be tempted to get into this movement. And I'm telling you this because I was too, right? Where I knew that London really begins at 3 a.m. and then it runs all the way until 7 a.m. That's the true London session, the main London distribution session, right? For trading in RVBs. Now, like I say, you're gonna sometime have set up that forms here. Now, why is this important? What do you even need to notice? The reason why you need to notice is because let's say if you have an RVB that gets swept, reclaim, right? We reclaim above that RVB after sweeping it. This is 3 a.m. What you want to do is essentially wait for price to sweep that RVB, like all these sweep that we saw the first time, and reclaim it again after 3 a.m., essentially after 3:01. If you get that reclaiming at 3:01 or later, 3:01 all the way into 7 or whatever, right? Typically, it will be the first 30 minutes of this 3 to 7 a London session. That's when you can enter and target its original standard deviation for target, right? That's how I would trade this move. I'll wait for its sweep and then I'll target either standard deviation -4 or standard deviation -3. These would be like safe level target that you can essentially anticipate that move to take you back up to. And sometimes it will be even more because when you have sweeps like that, it's essentially inducing so many people to go in the wrong direction first, and then it makes you believe that we're selling off. So it's essentially taking two sides of the market and then running liquidity like with momentum in this direction afterwards. So certain days you can sometimes see this deliver all the way to standard deviation, maybe 6 or 10, sometime away from the entry. And then during this session right here, 3 to 7, you essentially want to trade mainly RBB. So the way that you want to be able to see this forming, you just want to have all this checked off, right? So you can uncheck this if you want, but if you check this, make sure it shows 3 to 7 in one of the trading window that's up there above this, because there's going to be trading windows that you can select the start time and the end time. So I'll put 3 a.m. 301 all the way until 7 a.m., right? For your trading windows. And you can put it on one of them, and then the other one you can put a different time or put nothing. That's totally fine. If you're mainly looking at London, I'll probably just put 00 to the other one so it doesn't disturb you or create confusion. And then you want to click enable this button so it actually locks in that time, right? So you don't see anything outside of that. You can check off AVB, it doesn't really matter as long as you checked off this one right here all the way down, because AVB is really supposed to only show up for 12 to 12 16 window. You want to click off RVB, so that's going to be the main entry type. You're going to look in that window. You want to also check off MVB, so you can kind of see which setup, which RVB is kind of like a little like an A plus setup. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, also check off this one. Okay, so that's essentially that for the RVB. Now, the importance of making sure that you have all this checked off, and then you trade between this window and this window. Let's say, for example, you come at 6 a.m., right? You need to make sure that you know what happened in the beginning of 3 a.m. onward. So because let's say, for example, this is 3 a.m. right here. Let's say this is 4 a.m. and this is, let's say, 5 and this is 6. So you came here, you came late in your session. The first thing that I would do, I would go all the way to 3 a.m. and I would check to see, did we get any sort of RVB that delivered earlier on and that hit their target? Maybe it was a sell, RVB minus. It delivered a sell to its target. And maybe at 4 a.m., now you got to buy, like you had the RVB that deliver your buy, and then it's probably running to its target. Its target might be somewhere here, standard deviation -4. And then in between, and like maybe past is essentially pulling back in the meantime. It has not hit the final target yet. Past is pulling back maybe from here, playing around, and it delivers a sell. If you came on the market at 5 a.m. and you see this sell right here, but don't see what has delivered before, you're not understanding, you're not vetting the order flow from the beginning of your session to ensure that you're aligning with whatever is the most current RVB distribution, right? So that's how you manage the order flow of your session. You always check from the beginning all the way throughout. So even if you come late, that's why if you're trading London session, just start from the very beginning. So you're aware of everything and then you're in sync with your session, right? So you need to make sure so you're disciplined. But that's really what I wanted to touch on this. Briefly going to the the pre-New York order flow roadmap, 7 a.m. right to 7:45 is going to be the early distribution window. And the reason why I say early distribution is because when we trade between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. or 9:16, I should say, so 7 a.m. to 9:16, you are only trading in this window, right? If you have news at 8 a.m., 8:16, 8:30, or 9 a.m. That's a red folder or an orange folder. If you do not have that, do not trade this window, please. Right? If you don't have any red folder, orange folder, you're going to get chopped around. Whatever setup that you're going to get is going to chop you. Okay? It is going to chop you. The only time you don't need news to really trade any of these, for the most part, is only if you're trading this window right here. This is one of my evergreen window where it doesn't really need any sort of news, because a lot of the time if you get an entry in this zone, that's an RVB. So that's an, I'm sorry, that's an MVB. it is typically going to align itself with the manipulation of 930. Like 9 times out of 10, it is going to align itself with 930 manipulation. So, but before that, you need to ensure that you have news, right? You need to make sure that you have news. So, and then this is how you utilize this. For example, if you have news at 8:30, what you're going to want to do is two things. You need two things in order for you to look for an RVB setup. Okay. For you to look for an RVB setup, if you have a news at 8:30, you first we need to check 45 minutes up to 45 minutes before that news essentially deliver. So if you have news at 8:30, so that means 7:45 is the earliest that you can find an RVB entry for this news driver right here. Number two, you need a major psychological level, right? Levels like 21,200, 21,400, 19,000. Level that ends with two zeros or three zeros to essentially have failed to be grabbed by either New York, London, or Asia for that current day. Ideally, the current session is typically best. So since this is going to be essentially when London is still kind of playing out, and then soon we're going to begin with New York, or maybe New York has begun, most of the time it is going to be London that fails to grab it, right? Maybe London fails to grab your major psychological level below you, and then you have an RBB that already began delivering in that direction. So let's say if you are London low, let's say London low, we're going to erase all this. Let's say London low is all the way down here. Let's say London low is all actually here, right? This is London low. And then the MPL is right here. We came within 40 points to grabbing it and then reverse, right? And then the news is somewhere like here, right? 8:30. What you will see most of the time when you have the news, up to 45 minutes before, so this is 7:45, right? You're gonna have an RVB sometime deliver. So this could be the RVB right here. We sweep above, we claim below. Maybe this is like 8:15, 8:10, right? It delivers. Once it delivers, you can enter and then you can simply hold it to this MPL down here. Boom. The news here will simply help drive the final move or push to your target, which is this MPL. And this MPL is simply going to be a final target. And that's how you trade the news. If the news driver here is before 9:30, I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's after 9:30 as well, but this is what it will look like. So you will simply use the indicator to essentially get the confirmation entry 45 minutes before that, as long as you have this as your draw, right? And by the way, the indicator gives you these levels. It already gives you, if you have a level that had failed to be grabbed by a session level, it will be an MPL in blue. You can change it to whatever color you like. And then you can also, when it fails to be grabbed by any of your current day session levels, it will glow yellow. Currently, that's a default setting that we have right now, but you can change that glow. So that's how you will know if an MPL is a potential draw that you can use for that day. Now, if it does not glow, then you know it's not necessarily a draw. So you can essentially just don't worry about that. But that is essentially how you would know for a fact that, okay, I need to focus on this, right? Because there's a glow target down here, and then we have a trade in that direction, and we have 45 minutes before the news, this delivering. So this should be the move that essentially help carry the movement of the news and help deliver in my target. Most of the time, have you noticed like the move from eight, like all the news drive or the news movement that happened before 9:30, if you paid attention to that, they're typically very low in movement or lethargic. It is not random. It's because the move that actually created, like that's actually for that news, has begun way before anybody's aware of it, right? But it's not every time that you have news that this will happen. It will be here and there in between. So you need to know how to vet to look for this. And if you know how to vet to look for this, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. could be a bread and butter for many people that trade this window. So if London for me was like lethargic, then I do really well. Most of the time, I would do really well in London. Well, I don't need to necessarily sit during this window, but a lot of the time when you have news in this window, sometimes London can barely give me any clean setup. And then I may be just sitting on my hand and be like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna wait for that window. All right, because I didn't get anything for like the first 3 hours or something. So If I notice a news, and I'm like, all right, let me just wait and see because it could set up a major level of liquidity, potential target, and I can just trade towards that target if I do get an entry set up. And this happened very often. You'll be very, very surprised. So that's how you would trade this, and these are different windows that you want to kind of like pay attention to, aligning with that order flow filter that I mentioned earlier. So last but not least, let's take a look at the New York main session. All that I highlighted here is just like the main hour time that you see the red and orange folders. So when you go deep inside of like NF, like I think NF not NFB, FOMC, like 2 p.m., you start to understand how to trade that. You kind of start visualizing in your head now, right? How to trade that. Now, it is a little bit different now when you're talking about the main New York session. Okay. The difference between pre-New York session and then post-New York open is very, very unique. See how earlier I said that if you have a news, you look before, right? 45 minutes before, right? The news. And that's essentially where you want to find your RVB as long as you have a target to trade towards that. Now with New York, it is different, right? With New York, it's actually going to be forward. So let's say if the news is at, let's say 10 a.m., right? You're going to look from 10 a.m. all the way up until 10:48, like max, right? So 48 minutes after the news, up to that is where you want to look for your RBB entry. And then you're also going to want to ensure that price has failed to grab an MPL2, the same thing. So you have an HPO, high probability objective. If you don't know what an HPO is or how to essentially find a high probability objective, please, I made a video on my YouTube channel called High Probability Objective or how to identify high probability entries, or your exit or draw on liquidity. If you look up for one of those videos from my Arcane concept playlist, you find a video and I can link it as well in the description in this video or major video that will help with understanding this completely. I'll link it in the description, or you can comment and ask me. I'll also send it to you if you don't find it there. So essentially what you want to see here, price begin moving maybe in London. London comes here, fails to grab this MPL. And then let's say 10 a.m. I'm going to erase this up here. Let's say 10 a.m. is like, let's say right here. So 10 a.m. happened, boom. We take out this liquidity. Maybe we can take out some other level of liquidity right here. And this is maybe 10:15. And then you start seeing price reversing and then it chops here. And then you get your bearish RVB here, somewhere here, boom, and it delivers, right? And then maybe this is like 31 or 32, right? And then it just slowly just dip all the way back down to this target right here. And this is how it would typically happen. But it will happen after the news, right? Meaning that the drive, like the after, if a news happen after 9:30 open, the news will be the manipulation, right? And then the RVB or your entry would essentially just be the distribution. If you think of it like manipulation, accumulation, manipulation, distribution, right? Accumulation is not even going to be part of this whole process, or we can think of it like EMD as well, like one of my main concepts that I talked about before, where expansion or manipulation is not even going to be in the picture. You mainly focus on manipulation and distribution. Most of the time before 9:30, if you're trading with the news, the move that you're trading is essentially going to be the manipulation. And then the news is going to be helping you distribute. It's kind of crazy. After 9:30, the indicator, when it gives you this entry, right? The news happens, that's the manipulation. And then your entry is the distribution. That's the flip side. It's not going to click, but I'm telling you, if you come back and we watch this, it's going to blow your mind once you start grasping this. You're going to start understanding how to trade. You're going to start seeing how it doesn't really matter. You can cash move left and right. So that means that for us, right, people that trade Arcane concept, we understand how to trade with news, right? I don't fear news. Volatility create patterns that is recognizable and predictable. So if you don't align with what's already pre-planned, because most of the news like are already pre-planned. Believe it or not, most of those days when you see news, those moves are pre-planned. Our goal as trader in retail is simply cashing a piece of that move. That's it. We're simply trying to capture a small piece of the move and get out and go about our day. So when you're coming to trade, and this is the reason why this is so beautiful, because before the indicator, before I build this, I used to do all this manually. I didn't have something that could facilitate the process. Now that it's built, it took me 7 to 9 months to build my entire analysis software, Argo. So it gives me the entry. So all I have to do now, if I'm trading New York, I just wait for days I have red folders or orange folders. Once the news hit, if it's after 9:30, once the news hit, I'm just scanning, looking for a potential target. If I have a potential draw that's set up, right, that glowing yellow, all I'm going to wait for now is just like the entry confirmation and then just trade towards a target. That's it. That is all you're doing. And this indicator gives you the most precise entry for those days and for those situations. Cheat freaking code. Cheat code, guys. And this is the reason why I'm definitely going to charge for the way I charge for this indicator, because this literally was just simplify your trading to a different degree. I mean, it is you just see your level of profitability just go through the roof once you start implementing this and doing this consistently. But I hope that makes sense. My evergreen setup, this is the one that I mentioned earlier. This setup itself has probably somewhere between 80 to 85% win rate. I would say in some case, probably like closer to 90%. It's my evergreen setup. You get an average of like 1 to 2 setup on the low end to like 4 to 5 setup per week on average. So it fluctuates between there. Average risk to reward is typically between 1 to 2 all the way to 1 to 4.5 because of the trailing mechanics for trailing take profit. So some of the trade that are winners trail significantly sometimes and sometimes double my RR from like sometimes 1.5 or 2 R to like 4 or 3 R, give or take. So all you have to do is select all the entry type on the settings, but RVB, remove RVB out from that. And then you want to essentially pick 9 a.m. to 9:16 for the first window, and then pick 12 to 12:16 for the second window. So all you have to do is select all the entry type, as you can see here, MVB, AVB, MVB, right? And then just unselect RVB and then have this. So if you don't want to think too much about news and all of this stuff, you just want something that's simple. Maybe it gives you anywhere between 2 to 5 setups a week on average. Some weeks it's only going to be one. Very rarely it's going to be one. Just plug this in and then simply wait for the signal to appear in these windows. It's literally 32 minutes a day that you just have to watch those windows. That's it. If you want to simplify your trading, this will literally make you profitable almost overnight, right? Just following this. That will be probably something that if someone is looking for simplicity, this is what you want to do, right? If you're looking to just like push your edge, maybe do a little bit more than that, think a little bit more thinking, you can go to the order flow, master it, and maybe trade primarily 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then maybe some other days you can trade past that, and then master that, and then couple it and mix it with this entry type. You'll be doing some really good damage. Okay, but overall, that essentially is primarily the entire breakdown for the session order flow. I don't think I have anything else on this breakdown for today. So you should have an idea now how to navigate each sessions and how to utilize the indicator to essentially cache entries. And like I said, if you're not familiar with my RVB setups, there's a video that I made on my reclaim volume block. I can link it in the description, or you can just simply ask me, or I'll go ahead and send it over to you. Maybe pin to this video as well. That'll be a great video to watch. And I also made a quick setting breakdown of the indicator. For those of you that already have acquired it, that could also be a nice video to essentially just get acclimated and familiar with that. And then have a clear understanding essentially how to navigate and also utilize the indicator on top of navigating the sessions and navigating each of these windows that I described. But that's really all for today. I hope, just as always, this video was insightful. It gave you a really, really good understanding of how to navigate, consistently have a clear view of what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to start, and how to navigate and go through each of these specific windows that I mentioned. So with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, stay in profit. Peace.